Coming up on Network Africa, 225,000 people displaced as a result of floods in Niamey, in Niger's capital. Well, 10 children killed in Uganda after lightning struck them dead. Plus, Burundi refugees return home from Rwanda as diplomatic ties thaw between the two countries. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. The authorities in Niger say recent flooding in the capital Niamey has forced over 225,000 people from their homes. Also, the number of deaths has risen to 45. Parts of the city have been submerged since Tuesday when the river Niger breached its banks with heavy rains causing further damages. Local media reports that rescuers used canoes to help the victims out of the floods. Last month, officials issued a warning that about 300,000 people were at risk from flooding since heavy rains began in the country. Well, Sudan is also battling with flood waters which have reached the highest levels on record, killing dozens of people, destroying thousands of homes, and encroaching on some neighborhoods of the capital, Khartoum. The flooding comes despite Ethiopia starting to fill the reservoir behind a giant new dam upstream on the Blue Nile in July. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is expected to help Sudan control future floods. Now, flooding is regular in Sudan in the summer, but this year's unprecedented water levels have left larger tracts of farmland submerged and residents around Khartoum keeping watch outside their doors for fear of the rising waters. And for the first time in living memory, flood waters also spilled over into major roads in Khartoum, the capital. Well, 10 children have been killed by lightning in the northwestern Ugandan city of Arua after sheltering in a hut during a storm. The children were playing football when heavy rain forced them to take a break in a nearby grass-thatched structure which was struck by lightning. 9 children aged 13 to 15 were killed on the spot, while another died on the way to the hospital. However, 3 survivors are receiving treatment at the regional hospital. The country's northwestern region has been experiencing severe rains coupled with thunder and lightning. This is the worst accident of its kind in Uganda since 2011, when 18 children were killed at a school in the Midwestern region. That year, 28 people also died from lightning strikes in a single week. Well, the black box to an helicopter that crashed in Lagos State here in Nigeria this afternoon has been recovered by the Accident Investigation Bureau. 2 people have unfortunately lost their lives when the plane crashed into a compound on Salvation Road area of Okwebi. 1 person is currently in hospital receiving treatment.
Residents of Salvation Street in the highly commercial area of Okwebi in Lagos were jolted by the sound of a helicopter crash this afternoon as business activities were gradually picking up. It was an unexpected incident that will shape a discussion of residents for the rest of the day as crowds poured into the area to get a glimpse of the remains of the helicopter. No one in the building was hurt as the police worked to control the crowd.
For the end of today, I think this thing will be removed. And depending on what they start seeing. So if this one is removed now, every other thing that comes that lives with it. So that's around it, we're taking care of. So by this time tomorrow, I know that this place will come back to the normal way of life. So every human being, anything that happens is an accident. So it's not planned, so it's not prepared. Once such thing happens anywhere, they should just alert all the agencies immediately without any panic. At times, panic creates additional disaster.
First responders at 16A Salvation Avenue, where the Bell helicopter crashed, say there were 3 passengers on board. 2 died, while the other survived and is receiving treatment at hospital. No one in the building was hurt.
We received a dispatch call in our command control center that there is a helicopter mishap, and immediately we activated the Lagos State Emergency Response Plan. All the key stakeholders moved to the scene. We have the ambulance services, we have the LASEMA, we have the fire, and we have the police being led by the Commissioner of Police. And with that, we are able to rescue one alive, and that person has been transferred to Lagos State Teaching Hospital, where he is receiving adequate treatment. But it is pertinent to note that we recovered 2 bodies. The 2 bodies have been deposited at the mortuary. Based on the investigation carried out, it was due to the impacts on these bodies that led to their mortalities.
The incident was first confirmed by the Accident Investigation Bureau. Then there was a tweet from the Chief Press Secretary to the Lagos State Governor, Mr. Boyega Akoshile, who gave casualty figures. Sources from the Federal Ministry of Aviation identify the aircraft as a Bell 206 owned by Quorum Aviation. Reports say there were 2 crew members and 1 passenger on board the helicopter, which had flown into Lagos from Port Harcourt.
These are more scenes from the helicopter crash in the Opebi area of Ikeja, the Lagos state capital, as we see neighbors and residents working together to extract a victim from under the wreckage. The owner of the building into which the chopper crashed, an elderly lady, relates her experience.
Big large sound that I never heard in my life. It happened that the thunder and the smoke and everything, under this one, there was no, the light was on. The light was on, and it's still on now. But all I have to do is to thank God.
Well, Burundi refugees who fled to neighboring Rwanda in 2015 following a political unrest have started returning home as diplomatic ties between the 2 East African neighbors warm up. The first group of more than 500 people left Mahama camp in eastern Rwanda after they had tested negative for coronavirus. The camp hosts more than 60,000 Burundian refugees. Now, the UN Refugee Agency says more than 1,800 refugees in the camp had registered to go back home, but not all of them can be taken back because a transit camp to temporarily lodge them in Burundi can only host around 500. Burundi's President Evariste Ndayishimiye had earlier this month accused Rwanda of holding the refugees hostage and said his country will never have relations with the country that uses irony in its relations. Well, at least a third of the world's school children, 463 million children globally, are unable to access remote learning as a result of the COVID-19 lockdown, which shuttered their schools. According to a new UNICEF report, at the height of nationwide and local lockdowns, around 1.5 billion school children were affected by school closures. As countries continue across the world to grapple with their back-to-school plans, the report outlines the limitations of remote learning and exposing deep inequality in access. The report also highlights the significant inequality across regions, with school children in sub-Saharan Africa being the most affected, where at least half of all students cannot be reached with remote learning. President of the United Nations General Assembly, Mr. Tijani Mohamed Bande, is calling for joint efforts by the international community to fight against COVID-19. Mr. Mohamed Bande called for equitable access to the COVID-19 vaccine, urging the international community to ensure affordable pricing once the vaccine is developed. He also stresses the necessity of reducing the impact of COVID-19 on poor countries.
I think one is to continue the scientific collaboration among scientists around the world, and to also have the understanding that if vaccines or other therapeutics that have been found that are effective, let there be clear understanding that they're effective for everyone, and that it's clear that there can be no solution to the pandemic on the basis of nation states. And this is important. And I think more and more, this understanding of the connection between the scientific community to work together to create, to have vaccines, and to also find means of getting the vaccines available to those who need them, regardless of their circumstances, I think is absolutely important.
Well, the Secretary General of the World Tourism Organization says Egypt is ready to receive international visitors as the country tries to jumpstart the sector after suffering a major blow brought on by the pandemic. Zuba Polioki Kaslivi visited Egypt's famous Giza pyramids as well as the new Grand Egyptian Museum on what was his first trip outside Europe since the pandemic. He says he aims to offer support and cooperation as well as assess the extent to which Egypt is ready to receive international tourists.
Should see the numbers which we have in the country, especially the main touristic destination, which is Cairo, Sharm el-Sheikh and Hurghada. We visited Hurghada in Cairo, and we saw that all measures made by government and all protocol, sanitary protocol, is more than ready to compare with other destinations, and it gives us hope to say that Egypt is safe, Egypt is ready to receive again international tourists.
Meanwhile, mosques have reopened in Egypt for the first time since March to accommodate Friday prayers as the government eased restrictions to curb the spread of the new coronavirus. Egypt closed mosques and banned public gatherings in March to contain the spread of COVID-19, but gradually eased restrictions in June and July when coronavirus infections started to decrease. Mosques reopened for the first time late June with strict health and safety protocols, but worshippers were not allowed to perform Friday prayers, which usually sees the highest turnout. Cairo's historic Al-Azhar Mosque opened its doors to scores of worshippers, including men, women, and even non-Egyptians. We'll have more on the situation in Egypt. We'll have Edward Yeranian, the VOA's correspondent, join us later. Still ahead on the program. A top Muslim Brotherhood leader, Mahmoud Ezzat, is arrested in Egypt. We'll have more on that. Thank you. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. We're still in Egypt, where security forces have arrested a top leader of the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood group. A statement by the Interior Ministry said the fugitive, Mahmoud Ezzat, was hiding in an apartment in a wealthy area of eastern Cairo. Mr. Ezzat was convicted of a string of crimes while he was on the run and had been sentenced to death. Well, we have Edward Yeranian, VOA's correspondent in Cairo, joining us now for more. Hello, Ed. Thanks for speaking to us.
Good afternoon, Leo.
Good afternoon. What's the mood like? Let's begin with the people are back to the mosques to have their Friday prayers. What's the mood like for Muslims who have had this chance to pray again in the mosques?
Most of the people I spoke with were very enthusiastic about the reopening. The media, Egyptian media, showed various mosques with crowds in front of the buildings and spoke with people going in. And I would say that in general, globally, the public mood today was one of a return to normalcy. People were pleased that things were starting to return to normal.
And what has been the compliance level so far to measures in place to, reduce the spread of the virus among the worshippers?
Well, they required people to bring their own prayer mats. They also required people to come in with face masks, and they spaced the worshipers out inside the mosques, because that's generally what they're doing in other public buildings. And outside the mosque, well, I think people are a little bit more lax. But in the open air, I think that's the general pattern for wherever people are.
Yeah, all right, Ed. Let's just switch to the arrest of Mahmoud Izzat. He's a top leader of the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood group. What is the implication of his arrest?
Well, the government is certainly making a big deal about it. He is the top Muslim Brotherhood leader who was still inside the country. I think most people didn't know he was inside the country because Arab media suggested that he was in Turkey, I believe. And he looks like he's very old. I mean, he looks very feeble in the pictures that have been shown of him by the Egyptian Interior Ministry. I'm not really sure how much or to what extent he was really controlling anything, but certainly the police found a lot of information from the computers that were inside the building where he was hiding, and there were suggestions in the media that this will give them some clues as to a number of alleged Muslim Brotherhood operations of the past 5-6 years.
Oh, all right, then. Thank you, Edward Yeranian, VOA's correspondent in Cairo. Have a nice weekend.
You too, Laya.
Nigeria must find a long-term solution to the hostilities being meted out on her citizens' businesses in Ghana. The former Nigerian High Commissioner to Ghana, Senator Musli Obanikoro, expressed this view on our breakfast program Sunrise Daily. He wants the country excluded from the mandatory $1 million capital expected to be paid by businesses to Ghana Investment Promotion Council before commencement of businesses in Ghana.
You see, there are some Nigerians who have made up their mind to live in Ghana. We are not going to abandon those ones too. We must find a lasting solution to it and ensure that it does not repeat itself. We must get Ghana to expunge our name, which is Nigeria, from the list of countries that must comply with either the 300,000 or the $1 million capital that is expected to be paid to Ghana Investment Promotion Council before you can operate within Ghana.
Meanwhile, another guest on the program, veteran journalist and publisher of Ovation International, Dele Momodu, wants President Buhari to personally wade in and act fast.
Is the government must be seen not to have abandoned their people in Ghana. The thing is that there is this so much anger that Nigerians come there and they are able to sell at cheaper rates compared to their Ghanaian competitors. The only person who can help these guys now is our dear beloved president, and he must act.
Welcome to our Africa Tech segment. According to scientists, the human brain may be an even more powerful computer that before thoughts, as it possesses about 1 billion neurons and with 1 quadrillion connections known as synapses wiring these cells together. This can be evident through the life of Tella Jolade, a young individual whose mind has the ability to control numbers without the use of a calculator. Take a look.
Can you imagine having to add, subtract, multiply, or even divide multiple digit numbers without the use of a calculator? You probably can't, right? Except you're one of the few referred to as a human calculator. There seems to be no clear-cut definition of human calculator in a regular dictionary, but according to Wikipedia, the term is used to describe a person with a remarkable ability in some areas of mental calculation, such as adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing large numbers.
3 times 5 times 2. Okay, that will be 650.
Oh yeah, times 3.
1,950.
Times 9.
17,550.
Tella Jolade is one of the few with such abilities. A former student of the Lagos State University, Tella says he discovered that he could control numbers without thinking about it at the age of 6.
I have the ability to control numbers with my brain. I can multiply, divide, subtract, add, do square roots, cube roots, and some other things without using calculators.
Having such mathematical ability like that of Tella's could come in two ways, being a prodigy or training oneself. For Tella, the former is the case. Although he says he's been mocked severally for his talents, he never relented.
At times, people trying as much as possible to still mock you despite the fact that you do what you do. Because there are some things I'm going to keep anonymous, whereby they will still like, what's so special about it? Half human, half machine is very possible. But one thing, it has to do with the fact that training and consistency and discipline, those are the things that one really needs. 35,000.
Times 5.
175.
Times 5.
875.
Times 5.
4,375.
Times 5.
21,875,000.
Tella is in the first with such skills. Some of the world's famous maths masters are Shakuntala Devi, also known as the human calculator. Her talent earned her a place in the 1982 edition of the Guinness Book of World Records. Scott Flansburgh has same ability that led him to be named fastest human calculator by the Guinness Book of World Records for speed of mental calculation in 2001 and 2003. And 20-year-old Nilakanta Banu Prakash, who recently won world's fastest human calculator title for India in the Mental Calculation World Championship. But these skills still build up curiosity in others who find it difficult to comprehend.
I was invited to College of Medicine in Niger, Lasukom, where they did some MRI tests. And they noticed that nothing was happening, even when they tried to, under rigorous training, like, okay, fine, they asked me to go through some things, and they kept on asking questions. The only thing that happened is that if the numbers are too large, then maybe that's maybe some seconds, probably 45 seconds, or at least minimum of 45 seconds for me to give the answers.
Tella is on his way to becoming a programmer, and he says he intends to use his gifts with automation to get the best out of it.
Well, seems like he's also on his way to getting the Guinness World Record. That's it on Network Africa today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke. Have a great weekend.